Doctrine and Covenants 63 comes about on the heels of Joseph Smith returning home from his historic trip when he traveled from Kirtland, Ohio, all the way over here to Independence, Missouri. Remember, he traveled there with a group of people, came here, dedicated this as the land of Zion. And this is all the sections basically from sections 52 to 62. 60 to 62, by the way, Joseph travels back with his company back here to Kirtland, Ohio. It is now August 27th of 1831, and Joseph has arrived back in Kirtland after being gone on this monumental trip, where he identified the land to build the New Jerusalem, or the city of Zion. Well, as you can imagine, when he gets back, the people in Kirtland have lots of questions. And the questions are things like this. Should they go to Zion, living there in Kirtland? If so, when do they go? And should they sell their farms? And how long should they stay there? Should they stay there forever? How are they to help fund it, by the way? All these questions are on their mind, and as you can see in the chapter heading, Joseph writes in his history, as the land of Zion was now the most important temporal object in view, I inquired of the Lord for further information upon the gathering of the saints and the purchase of the land and other matters. So section 63 is going to address many of these other matters that Joseph brings up. As you see, it's a fairly large section. It has a lot of verses in it. I would just remind of one thing as you study this section. You're going to see in here, look at this, the day of wrath for the wicked. Signs will follow by faith. Adulterous in heart, deny the faith. By the way, this is probably dealing with the fact that there had been some apostasy already within the church that Joseph was dealing with. The faithful get an inheritance. Well, that's Zion. I'll give you a full account of the Mount of Transfiguration. Mysteries of the kingdom. Once again, we're back to Zion. And then look, there will be wars. Wicked will slay the wicked. Saints are to gather to Zion. Blessings are assured for the faithful at the second coming in the resurrection, and on and on. You're going to kind of see within this revelation, it'll kind of go like this. There will be a concept about Zion, and then a sub-concept, and then something about Zion, and a sub-concept of how that's related to it. Zion, sub-concept. As you study this important section, keep that in mind and keep asking yourselves, what do these prophecies about the second coming have to do with Zion? What does the wicked slaying the wicked have to do with Zion? What does the earth being transfigured and accounts about the Mount of Transfiguration have to do with Zion? You're also going to see some temporal things in here that are dealt with, and just a few contextual things. One of them has to do with Sidney Rigdon. You're going to notice this in verse 56, where the Lord will talk about Sidney, and he says this, Sidney's writing is not acceptable unto the Lord, and he shall make another. Some people are confused what this writing is, but if you take a look at footnote 56a, I'd recommend you highlight that, D&C 5850. That's when they were in the land of Zion, and here is that verse, 5850, where the Lord says, I give unto my servant Sidney Rigdon a commandment that he shall write a description of the land of Zion, and a statement of the will of God, as shall be made known by the Spirit unto him. In other words, kind of like those that went into the promised land in the Old Testament. The Lord wanted Sidney to come back and give a good report of a land flowing with milk and honey. Apparently Sidney's a little bit like you and I when we write papers, and the Lord tells him, you need to make a second draft, revise and resubmit. Basically, I don't know if he didn't have the Spirit with him when he did it, but apparently the Lord was not happy with it. It's not acceptable. One other thing, notice in verse 65 as well, it's going to tell Sidney Rigdon here and Joseph that they should seek a home. Why? Why should they seek a home? Well, because they had been living here on the Isaac Morley farm. And Isaac Morley has just been told to sell this farm and send the money to Zion. And when he sells this farm, it basically leaves Joseph homeless. So what's Joseph Smith going to do? Well, he's to seek it out through the prayer and by the Spirit, and he's going to end up moving into a very important home in church history, which is this one. And it's known, oh, that was terrible handwriting, I'm so sorry, as the John Johnson home. In this home, up in these rooms up here, is where Joseph's going to do the majority of the Joseph Smith translation. Probably in this room, maybe, is where he's going to be pulled out and drugged this way. Where he's going to be tarred and feathered. He's going to preach a sermon after being tarred and feathered on these steps, standing on these steps right here while there's a congregation of people listening, including some of those that just tarred and feathered him. It's going to be up in this room, by the way, that Joseph Smith is going to receive Doctrine and Covenants, section 76, known as the vision of the 3 degrees of glory in the celestial kingdom. Joseph's going to love this home so much, by the way, that when he moves to Kirtland, he tries to have a smaller version of it built for himself. Well, there's some of the context of section 63, Revelation giving instructions for this newly excited and revealed concept called establishing the New Jerusalem, the city of Zion, and what these Kirtland saints should do to help bring it about.